Good morning for everyone that is joining. Good morning, climate resilience enthusiasts, of course. Thank you very much for joining this session today. It's the second CLIMAAX Webstival that we're hosting. Last year we were live from the pilot site in Portugal. This year we're online, so we're from all over the continent. This year, the CLIMAAX Webstival is named From Insights to Action, Advancing Climate Resilience. My name is Jip Lensen, and today with my colleagues Cristina and Jose, I will be guiding you through the Webstival and tomorrow, of course, as well. So before we'll start, I'll quickly introduce myself. My name is Jip Lensen. I'm a project officer at the European Association of Development Agencies. We're based in Brussels, and we're leading this Webstival today. We're very proud to be part of this great project, and today we'll guide you through the various aspects of this nice project. So to give you a brief overview of the agenda, we have a very packed schedule for today and tomorrow. So I'd like to walk you through today's agenda. We'll start with an introduction to the project. You'll hear from our project coordinator, Stiltaris, based in the Netherlands. And thereafter, we'll hear from the 5 pilot regions who co-developed and co-designed the CLIMAAX framework and toolbox. And we will hear from their experience and how they paved the way within the CLIMAAX project for other regions to also follow this path. After that session, you'll be able to ask the pilots directly about their experiences, about any tips and tricks that they could give to you. So that's a very nice opportunity, and we'll close today's session with a showcase from the Carmine project, who will share their insights into climate resilience as well. But before we'll start, I'd like to walk you through some housekeeping of today. You'll also be able to read it in the chat. But first and foremost, you should know that this session is being recorded. So if you would not like to appear on camera, please make sure to close your camera, and that way you will not be in the recording. We have a Q&A moments in the agenda, so please feel free to write your questions in the chat, and we'll do our best to get to all of them, depending, of course, on how many we have and if the time is permitting it. We also have the option to raise your hand and to ask a question verbally if you would like that. So without further ado, I think we should start going with the first session, a deep dive into the CLIMAAX project. And joining us for that today is Dana Stuparu. He's advisor on climate adaptation at the Deltares Technological Institute. So please feel free to take the floor, Dana.
Thank you, Yip. Thank you to you and the EURADA team for organizing this nice Webstival, and welcome to everybody in the participants. I am Dana Stuparu. I am a project manager of CLIMAAX, and I am glad to briefly introduce the project at the start of this meeting. Some information might be already familiar to the colleagues that have already, and the regions that have already joined the regions, but as we also have new people, I'm also going to go through the general objectives of CLIMAAX. Maybe you can go to the next slide.
Okay.
Yes, so why the CLIMAAX project? CLIMAAX responded to a tender from the European Mission of Adaptation, and helps to support the mission in its objectives to give guidance to at least 150 European regions and communities in their preparation and planning for climate resilience. Specifically, CLIMAAX is a 4-year project that aims to provide financial, methodological, and also practical support for regions to support climate risk assessments and at next steps also improve their climate risk management. We have two main objectives in CLIMAAX. One is to co-design a methodological framework to assess climate change risks and impacts at regional scale across Europe. But also, very importantly, we aim to support the implementation of the regional climate risk assessments in more than 60 regions, cities, and communities. We are quite the CLIMAAX consortium consists of a diverse project team. We are multiple partners that are working together on this project, including partners that that are regional representatives, our pilots, as we call them. You're going to hear from them today. We have partners that have experience with methodological and scientific developments. We have partners that have experience with the assessments of different hazards and also support for technical implementation, but also cascading funds management and networking. So we are quite proud to be here and support the regions with a diverse project team. And we really see that the complementarity has helped us to put the project together, but also run the project in this period. The project started in December 2023 and is going to end in January 2026. So we have 2 more years in the project implementation phase. Yes, yep. As I mentioned, one of the core points of the project is the CLIMAAX methodological framework for climate risk assessments, and the framework really aims to provide guidance on how to implement and climate risk assessments in a coherent way and to have a comparable climate risk assessments across different hazards, but also across different regions within Europe. Next slide. Of course, but CLIMAAX cannot do local studies ourselves, but we do want to support third parties to do it at the regional scale. So the project had 2 open calls. We have already assessed the first open call, and via this structure, different regions are going to apply heat waves, wildfires, heavy rainfall, floods, droughts, multiple hazards in a phased approach to improve their climate risk assessments. Next slide. Where we are now. After 2 years in the project, the handbook CLIMAAX.eu is online and contains a well-documented climate risk assessment framework and climate risk assessment Python-based workflows. 5 pilots have already conducted their climate risk assessments from selected hazards. You're going to hear from them this morning. We have already assessed the first open call, and this has resulted in 32 selected beneficiaries that started their work, most of them in the beginning of October, and we are currently finalizing the evaluation of the second open call, which is going to become available in the coming weeks, the announcement on the winning regions. And at the same time, in the past months, we have an active support for the regions that have started via different platforms, and we are glad to see that this is well used so far, and we encourage you to connect with us when needed. Next slide. I have a few more minutes, so I would like to just highlight a few really important key elements of the project. One is the CLIMAAX framework. We have developed the framework by doing a very careful review of state-of-the-art knowledge in climate risk assessments, and the framework really aims to provide clear guidance on how to organize such a project. We were careful to give guidance for practical implementation and make sure that the framework has generally accepted standard approaches to support regions to support the regions in a systematic preparation of the climate risk assessment. Flexibility and scalability were very important, and we paid a lot of attention to include them in the framework. And also, I would like to draw your attention that the framework has a detailed set of guiding questions that users can consult to give ideas and suggestions on how to approach different steps of the framework. Next slide. Two other key points of the project are the CLIMAAX handbook and the CLIMAAX workflow. The handbook is available at the handbook.climaax.eu. This is an open space, not only for the project regions, but also for everybody interested in multiple climate risk assessments. So please have a look at it. It's a really nice overview of the methods and also tools. And it is regularly updated based on the insights that we're getting from the regions. The handbook also includes 11 operational workflows for 7 hazards. And the workflows cover different types of risk assessment methods, from exposure assessment, damage assessment, but also risk index, and also multiple climate scenarios and climate and guidance for and we are also currently extending our guidance for the development of climate scenarios. So this is for the project, the go-to page on how to reach this type of information. The next slide. Two other really nice elements of the project. One is the CLIMAAX community of practice. This community is a way for the project to consult and inform the regions, but also regions participating in related projects and the project activities. Also, it is a discussion forum to collect feedback and think what type of information is needed and how our products can be further refined. And of course, I would like to highlight the operational CLIMAAX support. A team the whole project team is behind the support line. You can reach us via the service desk, via the drop-in sessions, and this is for us the entry gate for the regions to pose any questions about the framework, the workflows, or other difficulties that you might face. So please don't hesitate to make use of it and let us know if you have any difficulties or your feedback. And the last slide. This Webstival is intended for us to get to know each other better, the regions, the starting regions, but also other colleagues interested in the project. We aim to share experiences, that is today, but also collect feedback on your insights from the project so far, and that would be tomorrow. So please let us know your thoughts, and looking forward to this together.
Thank you very much, Dana, for this great overview and great introduction to the project. I think it's it's excellent and very useful. And you also briefly mentioned the pilots regions and the very important work that they did. Basically, they laid the groundwork for the two batches of FSTP regions that we have. As their projects are now coming to a close, we would also like to hear from them. How their experiences were and what that added to the CLIMAAX project. In the stream, let's say, have a brief presentation from each pilot region about their regions, the results they have achieved. And after that, I'll take the opportunity to ask some additional questions about the co-creation and implementation process. And then finally, you'll also have the ability to ask them anything in the chat. So feel free to take this opportunity to engage directly with them. And we'll get to the questions in the chat. All right. To avoid taking up too much of the valuable time that we have, I would like to introduce the pilot representatives we have with us today. We have Ainara Casajus Valles from the Ministry of Home Affairs and Public Safety and Regional Government of Catalonia in Spain. We have Taina Hanikoski from the Finnish Ministry of the Interior, especially from the Department of Rescue Services. We have Dace Sandersone from the Latvian Environment, Geology and Meteorology Center. We have Cristina Coelho from the pilot site in Setúbal in Portugal. And we have Mijal and the team representing the pilot project in Zelina in Slovakia. So first of all, thank you very much for everyone for being here. I would like to give the floor first to Ainara.
Okay. Good morning to everybody. I guess you can hear me. My name is Ainara. Thank you, Jip, for the introduction. And I work at the Civil Protection Directorate General in the regional government, which is an institution which is part of the civil protection system. I'm sorry, maybe if you can move. Thank you. Yeah. So as I said, we are part of the civil protection system, which is based on the collaboration of different authorities, organizations, and stakeholders. And the system aims at protecting and securing the well-being of people, properties, and the environment. So I think it's good for me to say why we decided to join the CLIMAAX. In our case, the Directorate General needs more information on how climate change will affect the different hazards of natural origin and how materializing. So we need scientific evidence on how, in terms of intensity or duration or frequency, because these will allow us to prepare and act to protect our communities and assets. So for us, this information is key to draft policies and procedures and also to invest resources in climate change adaptation. In our particular case, when we design civil protection action, we contemplate the time that we have available for reaction, the characteristics of the hazards, and the context in general. So in that sense, when we prepare our own activities that can be communication campaigns or drills or even how we organize the material or the resources we have, we are more interested in having the information of the. So in CLIMAAX, we focused on 3 hazards. And if we can move to the next slide, I will just briefly present the results for heat waves, because it's probably the deadliest type of event in the region. In our case, we have a specific definition of heat waves, which for us, a heat waves is a period of time when the daily maximum temperature exceeds the 98th percentile for the reference period for 3 or more consecutive days. So, and we also issue alerts. I mean, our meteorological services, they issue alerts based on for the summer months. I think that's also interesting. It's good to say. So because we have a specific definition, we work with the technical partner Cajo, that will be later, I think, referenced much more, because they mainly prepare the workflow for this type of events. But also we work with UPC that supported us in obtaining results. So here in the slide, I'm presenting some of them. I'm showing the frequency of heat waves in our territory. The methodology provides information for specific locations, and here you can see for an area in Barcelona. The upper graph shows the occurrence of future heat waves, comparing RCB 4.5 and 8.5 scenarios in blue and in red for various periods of time. And the graph below shows the expected occurrence of heat waves per year, throughout the whole century, let's say. So it is evident that the frequency of episodes will increase in time, and then this will happen even more strongly under RCB 8.5. So with these results that I showed to you, we would like to complement the study and analyze the duration of heat waves, because many areas in the region already experience heat waves. So it will be helpful for us to understand if those episodes will be longer in order to adapt the actions that they already exist. And finally, for me to close, now that we have results, we are working to build and share messages that are concise and relevant. So we believe that only with robust and concrete messages, we can ensure that all these results that we have obtained can be applied in the region by the different stakeholders. That's all from my side.
Thank you very much, Ainara, for this great overview.
You're welcome.
I would like to follow that up with a question for you. Just for the regions that are going to start their project soon, or they have already started, if you could give one piece of advice to them, what would it be, or what advice would you have liked to have had in the beginning of your project, let's say?
Well, I think we kind of knew, but I think it's important to stress that all these type of process is iterative. I mean, it's very important to allocate time to discuss the requirements and the needs of the user, but also to discuss which are going to be the variables and the metrics that they are going to be addressed, and even the feasibility of certain analysis. And then, as I have said, also once you have all these results and you obtain them, you probably need to validate them. So you also have to keep time to make sense of the results and to create all these stories and messages. So I will say that it's important to keep in mind that you have time for all these different iterations and discussions.
Thank you very much. I think that's very useful advice to the other regions as well. So thank you again for your input. I would now like to give the floor to Taina Hanikowski from the Finnish Ministry of the Interior about their pilot projects. So the floor is yours.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me, and nice to see and hear you all. Yes, my name is Taina, and I work at the Ministry of Interior in Finland at the Rescue Department. And you can just click forward, and one more click. Yes, so the Finnish pilot was focusing on forest fire risk or wildfire risk. And in our interest was to see how it will change in the future with climate change. and also what this change will mean, for example, for rescue services and forest management or forest owners more in general. In Finland, Finland might be like not so on top of the list when you think about those who will face climate change. But at the same time, we know that the Nordic and northern areas will warm up faster than other regions in the world, and it's also very important for us to see how these different risks will change for us, and as Ainara said, to see where the resources will be needed in the future. And this was also our motivation to participate. And I think in CLIMAAX it's very interesting to see so many different kinds of pilots in different areas with different risks, and I hope that it really brings a lot of useful added value to other regions working on the project and the project tools as well. And in the pilot, we focused on two different kind of regions. So one was southwest Finland, and the other one was North Karelia, closer to the eastern border or next to the eastern border of Finland. And we also did some work with the heavy rainfall, but here I will now just focus on the forest fire risk. So you can please go forward. So in this pilot, we used the fire weather index as the basis for our analysis, and this is based on the meteorological model parameters. And then, of course, in Finland we have our own wildfire risk index. So then we sort of discovered the sort of important thresholds in the fire weather index that would correspond the most important ones to us, and we use those, and the days which then exceed this given threshold are called fire weather days. And in the left you can see this is now for the southwest Finland. You can see that there is an increase in these fire weather days, especially in the springtime. You can see that there is quite a heavy change. Which means for us that this fire season will increase in length for Finland. And then we used this information and combined it with different indicators for vulnerability and also exposure. We used especially the people living in wildland-urban interface and also population density, which you can see in the middle picture there. It's not very very large because Finland doesn't have a lot of people, but it's still a big important urban area for Finland in the southwest Finland. So for us, it's important. And then we combined these informations that we have to identify the actual risk. And then in the lowest picture, it's not very clear, but you can see that there are some spots that are identified as high risk areas and also some low risk areas. And then if you go forward, so just to sort of wrap up some thoughts about the process and also about the interpretation of the results. I think one of the biggest questions then for us as end users is, what do we actually know from the results and what do we don't know from the results? For us, this project gives us valuable puzzle pieces, and then it's sort of important to know for us that what kind of other puzzle pieces we have so that we are able to create a complete puzzle. And if you click forward, we can here see that, for example, from CLIMAAX, we get this information that forest fire season will start earlier in the spring in Finland. And then we have some previous research, which is also important, for example, telling us that winter storms in the future will be more destructive. It's not because we have more storms, but because of the ground frost will be non-existent due to warmer temperatures, which means that the trees and the vegetation will become more damaging and will be damaged more. So then when we combine, for example, these two information, pieces together, we see that there will be possibly more flammable debris on the ground after winter. And if the forest fire season starts earlier, then this is something that we need to take into consideration. And then this is now something practical and useful that we can, for example, tell the forest owners and firefighters that this is something that they need to take into consideration. And this is just a very small simplification of the process, but I think this is something that we have learned also from the CLIMAAX project, that this is something we have to do. And also, I would say that the visualization of the results is the key. So when we are communicating the results to our target groups, we need to make sure that they understand our message clearly from the project, and there is no duplication or anything unclear that they need to think about themselves or interpret in a different way. And then finally, I would say that it's very important also to remember that this is not a one-time thing, but we need to do this kind of analysis also in the future. But I think with the CLIMAAX project, we will get excellent tools for this, and this is something that we can use also in the future. And if you click once more, I can say that kiitos paljon. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Taina, for that great presentation. I also have a question for you as well. If you could have known something at the start of your project to make your process smoother, what would that have been? Or what would you like to have known at the beginning of the process, let's say?
That's a good question, because I think this has been a learning process in in many ways, not just for the project, but also for us, as we have been doing this together, the development process together with the project. But maybe I would have liked to know that it makes sense to invest. Actually, what Ainara said about the time and resources for the framework part, because the more you think about things in the beginning, the easier it will be towards the end of the process. So if you have done your sort of first steps very efficiently and thought about the target groups and other things with the guiding questions mentioned in the framework, the work is much easier at the end. And I think that's the biggest lesson, and my advice also for others.
Thank you very much again, and I'm sure they find that very useful to hear. Thank you very much. I would now like to give the floor to Datsip from Latvia about the pilot in Latvia. Let's see. Are you with us, Datsip? Otherwise, we can continue with the next presentation, and we come back to it at a later stage. So I would then like to give the word to Cristina Coelho from the Setúbal municipality about the pilot there.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you perfectly.
Good morning,
Thank you for your flexibility.
Greetings from Setúbal. I don't know how it is, but here it's raining and quite cold. But it's quite warm at the heart to see you all again. So welcome also to everyone who is attending, and thank you for having Setúbal at this session. So let's start, Chip. Okay, next slide. So Setúbal is a municipality in Portugal, so south of Europe. We are a quite complex territory. More than half of our territory, it's a natural protected area, but we also have heavy industry facilities and an international port. So it's quite a complex territory in terms of manage. and also a multi-risk territory concerning climate change impacts. So next slide. But we, as a pilot on CLIMAAX project, decided to work on precipitation, because one of our biggest problems from the past decades and centuries was fast flooding. This picture that you see here in this slide is from 2008. It's right where I'm at right now. It's the city council building. And as you can see, my colleagues were saved by the fire department boats, because everyone couldn't leave the building on that day because of the flooding. This is at the city center. So on the CLIMAAX project, we addressed precipitation risks, and that's what I'm talking about today. So next slide, please. We worked with EGOT, that's at the University of Lisbon. It's an institute for geography and urban planning. And we worked with the framework and the toolbox from the colleagues that were developing for extreme precipitation, heat waves, and forest fires. But today we're talking about extreme precipitations that we work on the framework and toolbox. As you can see here on the graphics, this is from EGOT team modeling. You can see that extreme events will increase in frequency further in 12 occurrences for 3 hours. Precipitation, so plus 200% that we have on the historic sequences. And next slide. Also for extreme precipitation in 24 hours, we'll have more extreme events. Extreme events will increase in frequency with 14 occurrences more than, that's 250% more than we have on the historical period that was taken into account from 76 to 2005. So this was what we had in terms of results from the framework and toolbox concerning extreme precipitation. Next slide, Chip, please. And as I said before, we worked mainly 3 key hazards: extreme precipitation, heat waves, and wildfires. However, concerning all these 3 risks, we had significant challenges, mainly because of the spatial resolution of the climate data, because we are a quite big municipality in terms of territory, but it's the municipality scale. So the Copernicus data limited the precision of the analysis at the municipal level. We would find that it's quite more applicable to regional level than the municipality level. Though this brought some constraints, but it was also a learning process. As Tina and I said before, we are all learning about different issues and different realities on this process. So one thing that we want to enhance, it's quite important at the municipal level to acquire higher resolution data sets and databases for having more detailed and localized assessments at the municipal level. One thing that we really would like to enhance is that this would be only possible with the partnership of the University of Lisbon, the EGOT team. They were really outstanding working with all this data and running the algorithms and all the programs that the municipalities don't have that type of resources of that technical and human knowledge. So this partnership was really a keystone for us, for our work as a pilot on CLIMAAX. So next, I would like to show you a video because we have this data, and we'd like to show you what Setúbal did concerning the precipitation and fast flooding models that we have. So go ahead, Chip. Oh, the video didn't. You have to go on play. Yeah, thank you. We need sound on. Is it possible?
And the Sado estuary.
Thank
However,
you.
Mediterranean climate, typical of southern Europe, with the hot and dry summers and rainy winters, increases the risk of floods, a phenomenon exacerbated by climate change. To address this issue, the Setúbal City Council invested over 3 million euros in the Várzea Urban Park, where retention basins were constructed to prevent flooding in the downtown during heavy rainfall. In this park, we prioritize natural-based solutions because we believe that nature is the best teacher. We have kept the soil as natural as possible, prioritized native vegetation, and emphasized the protection of existing biodiversity. For all these reasons, this is the most innovative park in Europe. It's the first constructed with natural-based solutions on such a significant scale, combining urban characteristics and allowing people to enjoy nature in the heart of the city.
So the Várzea Park, it's working. We know that we had some heavy precipitation, extreme precipitation in the past 3 to 4 years, and the retaining basins worked. Right now, the park, it's not as you see, it's all flooded because it has been raining the past few days. And we are also enhancing the sponge effect of the soil, putting more trees, more vegetation, endemic. And so we're trying to have a natural park that has a double function, retaining water for fast flooding downtown, absorbing water, enhancing that capacity, but also enhancing the struggle against heat wave phenomenon with having their very dense vegetation systems at the center of the city. And that's it that I had to share.
Thank you very much, Christina, for that great presentation and also for the video. And we have a question in the chat about whether the video is available somewhere to watch it afterwards, perhaps.
It has been on online on our site for the municipality,
Okay.
municipality. But I can send it to you if the link if it's needed.
Yeah, that would be great, and then we'll share it with everyone that would like to use it. Thank you so much. I have one other question for you as well. What practices, partnership, you already briefly touched upon this before, or approaches were most helpful to your success in your region and in your projects?
Well, it was a keystone having EGOT team with us on board from the beginning. They're a partner, very strong partner that work throughout and still right now scenario and risk assessment. That is, if I strongly advise for the people who are coming in right now from the calls to mainly municipalities or regional facilities, because at the municipality level here in Portugal, I think, and mainly throughout Europe, we don't have that knowledge to run toolbox coding, and mainly then if you have problems to underpass it and solve it. So for us, it was quite essential to have that team with us. And then also we tried, not from the start, we had the EGOT team, but throughout all the work, we tried to work with other stakeholders, the local health department, the civil protection colleagues concerning emergency response and their needs about these issues. what would be great for them having as outputs from the CLIMAAX project. So I think to start with, have a strong scientific technical team with you. And then work with local stakeholders, with their knowledge, with their needs, and try to bring that into your work, because you want to have some outputs that can help you in managing emergency response and also land planning.
Thank you very much. I think that's a very good overview, and I think also a very central theme through what we heard so far is stakeholder engagement. That it's very important to be well positioned within a network of various stakeholders to get to that success. So thank you once again for your great inputs. I would now like to give the floor to Žilina City in Slovakia. We have Michal and the team who are going to present some slides as well. So please feel free to start your interventions.
Good morning to everyone from Žilina, Slovakia. I would like to thank very much as well for this opportunity to present our case within the CLIMAAX project and also to be part of this project. So let's have a look what did we do. I would like to connect to what was said by our colleagues from other pilots because there are interesting connections. We have identified two major hazards at the beginning that we would like to cover in this project, and that were urban floods from heavy raining, so similar like in Setúbal, the strong precipitations, and also heat waves. Maybe to put it to a larger context, Žilina, like other pilots as well, is taking care of the climate change adaptation and has been taking care of it before CLIMAAX project started. But also taking part in this project has been a good piece in the puzzle, like Taina said, that brings us more knowledge and raises more questions to do the climate change adaptation and the assessment stronger and of higher quality. Our strong partner has been also CAIO group that is based, coming from Slovakia. So we had a local partner, strong local partner as well. When I come back to the hazards, on the urban floods, we wanted to have this as a top priority because, of course, if you see a lot of water, like Christina was showing from Setúbal, from the square, the square full of water. Now and then we have got this situation after strong precipitations in some crossings and some streets of Žilina. Usually it's of very local matter that it's not the whole city, but it's really local. And we wanted to know how much higher can the water level be in the future. However, through the project, we learned that to get such precise result is not so easy from the CLIMAAX project because of the nature of the project, that the results should be also reusable by other pilots, by other regions or cities. And we realized that this requires a detailed simulation of the spot because there are a lot of details coming into the picture, also technical solutions that are available that change within the time. And we realized that probably for obtaining this result, we need to use a different tool. So at the end, we moved to the heat waves workflow. That was our number 2. And similar to Catalonia, we obtained interesting results that I will show you in the following slides. So here we use the data from Eurocodex Codex from the European level. And for the climate scenarios, RCP 4.5 and 8.5. And again, as Christina said, the data from the European level are rather coarse, which means that not very detailed. The 12 times 12 kilometer grid is for 80,000 inhabitants city in the Central Europe. Well, for such size of the city is too much. However, we have got some results, and we managed to apply them to more detailed results. And as you can see on the pictures, we have got the heat wave occurrence in the selected area. How much will in the future in these scenarios the number of heat waves increase with the red color for the 8.5 and the blue color for the 4.5 RCPs. Also, on the lower picture, we can see the heat wave occurrence in the selected pixel, picked one of the pixels from the city area, and it shows again the increase if the worst scenario will happen. Okay, we can move on. The main result for us are these maps that you can see here. First of all, we took into account the exposure. We have had some data on this from the Landsat 8 land surface temperature, which is the pixels have 30 by 30 meters square size, and from this you can see on the first picture where are the heat islands where the highest temperature occurs within the time, and where it is less risky. Then, of course, we had data about the vulnerable population, although, well, we did not have the data from the local sources. However, we had them from the World Pop data, and from this, however, we defined some vulnerable areas from the municipality office, and altogether, putting it together, we got the final heat wave risk level map, as you can see in the bottom right corner, with the red being the areas with the highest attention we should put to. And if we move to the next slide, here you can see a more detailed picture when the results from the CLIMAAX project, again with the colors used in the previous slides, these results are combined with the urban development plan from the main architect's office. And here we can clearly see which areas are the most threatened and how they should be taken care of. And this is integrated in the strategic planning of the city and into the communication with the stakeholders. What we learned when analyzing these heat islands, we realized that in most cases it is not land owned by the city, but land owned by private owners. And so the city needs to communicate with the private owners more. And CLIMAAX project gives us a scientific proof and scientific arguments that we can use in the communication and in persuading these private stakeholders. I would name this as the main outcome of CLIMAAX for us, for a city of such size as Žilina. I believe that's all. So thank you very much for listening to me, and let's go for the questions.
Thank you very much, Michel, for that great intervention. I do indeed have a question for you. for example, what was the most unexpected challenge that you faced or your region faced throughout the process, and how did you go about it? How did you work through it, let's say, to overcome this challenge?
Yeah, the most unexpected challenge has been that we did not have the detailed data from the national level, mainly about the precipitations and the temperatures. There are some sensors within the city from the Slovak Hydrometeorological Institute. However, there are only 2 sensors maybe, and if you want to put it to the local scale, that is not really enough. And from the local level, we needed more detailed data about the population structure on the city territory. We know where there are senior homes or where there are schools, so we can judge that, but about how in which area, which streets are populated more with older or very young people, that data could be more precise. We solved that by estimates from the less detailed data and from the general knowledge about the city, as I outlined, where which institution is. Secondly, the unexpected challenge has been also missing interest from important stakeholders within the city that made us to feel rather alone in thinking about this topic. We realized that, yes, many people are talking about the climate change, and about the risks. However, to put it together, to let them think and invest time into discussions, that was rather a challenge, and realized that probably the municipal office and the architects are the leaders on this, and they have to educate maybe or to find these stakeholders and to educate them in discussing this more in depth in the future.
Thank you very much. I think that's a great overview of some of the challenges that you have overcome throughout the process. We do have Datse with us, I believe, right now. There were some technical issues before, but if you are here, I would be able to give you the floor and go back to the slides.
Yes, hello everybody. Unfortunately, this morning has been quite crazy in my side. That's why huge apologies for being late. But now I'm here and I can represent Latvia, the pilot region where I'm coming from. And I'm really glad that we are in this project, because I'm in the project. I'm representing Latvia, but I'm just like working in I'm working in a Latvian Environment Geology and Meteorology Center, so I'm mainly working with climate data. So in this project, it is taking me out of the comfort zone because of I should jump a bit further and I should talk more. I had to talk more with policymakers, with stakeholders, and different kind of institutions, because in the project there are just us, like the word written in the project, it's just our name there, and it sometimes were quite difficult. So our main point in this project was to understand climate risk assessment, because we are mainly technical people here, and we are used to work with scripts and climate data, but it is harder for us to understand this climate risk assessment circle, starting with scoping, risk exposure, and so on. But here we were looking at the floods. If we're talking about the workflows, then there are 2 different kind of floods in the workflow, river floods and coastal floods, and we looked at both of them. But here are some reasons why we are looking at the coastal floods, for example, because in Latvia we have coastline which is more than 500 kilometers long, and it is mainly loose in sandy sediments, which are very vulnerable to the coastal erosion. And based on the future climate change scenarios, we can see that sea level will rise in the future as well, and that's why it's very important for Latvia to look at these kind of problems, these kind of risks. And we can move further. Thank you. Here are some results from the floods workflow. These are coastal floods and hazards. because Latvia is naturally subjected to both coastal accumulation and erosion. We looked at both of these problems, erosion and accumulation. Accumulation isn't a problem, of course, but yeah, we do have both of these things. And erosion accelerates and natural barriers weaken. Coastal areas became more vulnerable to the impact of rising sea level, and this increased the risk of coastal flooding. And yeah, we can move further. Here are some map also from the workflow, which is based on Louisa land cover data, because if we're looking at different parts of Latvian coastline, we can see different kind of sediments. There are mainly loosey gravel deposits like sand, but then there are some different parts such as rocks, and at some places the grass is going into the sea. And that's why it's sometimes quite difficult to understand different places. And it is very important to have this local knowledge to understand why the results are the way they are because of the different sediments that are out there. I already mentioned that in the future, sea level will rise quite fast. And if we're looking at the historical values of our observations, then we can see that sea level hasn't risen that fast. But based on the future climate change scenarios, we can see that in the future, in the middle of the century, the sea level will rise quite fast, and that's why it is very important to start monitoring and thinking about these problems already nowadays. Yeah, these are also some plots from the workflow where you can see when we are putting together the sea level rise, land use data, and coastal flood return periods, we can also talk about damage. And here are damages that we can get out of the workflow. And when we were working with these workflows, we also added our own knowledge, our own local data based on our sea level rise scenarios and also our flooding maps, and we prepared these data with the values that we got out of the workflow. And the good thing is that, first of all, these values are quite similar. And that is one thing what makes me happy, because now I know when there are different workflows where we cannot compare them with our local data. In this case, we saw that these values are very similar, and we can actually use other workflows as well. So yeah, our main part in the project was to understand this framework, because it really was the most difficult part in our case, and we are still struggling at some parts of the workflow, to the framework, and we still have quite a lot of questions that there are just questions and we cannot answer them yet, but we are in the same direction, at least I think so. And we are talking to more and more stakeholders, to more and more policymakers, and it is improving more and more. And I can see that in the near future, we will really have this very nice principles and technical choices, how to do it in Latvia and so on. But yeah, it is this circle at first seems quite easy and understandable, but when you are really deeping into it, you can see that there are quite a lot of questions, quite a lot of things to think of. Of course, there is this huge risk analysis part where you have to think about different scenarios, which to use, different models, which to use, and so on. But in the other steps in this framework, there are as many questions as in the risk analysis part. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That's it for your time this morning. Even though the situation of before, we very much appreciate you being here with us. I do have a follow-up question for you. In the meantime, what key skill sets are required to effectively implement the CLIMAAX framework and toolbox?
Yeah, I'd say that there users has to have quite a lot of skill sets, starting from understanding climate data, have the climate knowledge. Then, of course, you have to understand something from the programming. If we're talking about data analysis part, of course, and you have to make interpret the data correctly. So that's why you have to have critical thinking, and then you have to also have the nice social skills, how to communicate with different stakeholders, and then you have to look very wide to see that there might be different kind of problems for different stakeholders for different people, and then you have to listen to them and try to understand them, so have a huge empathy, I'd say. So the skill set is very wide, and that's why nobody is doing this alone. All of us have teams, and we have to cooperate together to make all of this happen.
Thank you very much. That's very clear. Thank you very much for that. I do want to remind everyone, if you have a question for the pilot regions, feel free to write it in the chat or raise your hand at a later stage. I will take the liberty of asking one more question to the pilots, if that's all right with you. And then in the meantime, we see the other questions coming in the chat. So for Catalonia, we know that your pilot was also engaged in the analysis of episodes of heavy rain. Could you also briefly explain which are the possibilities of the toolbox and the results that you have interest in at the moment?
Yeah, thank you, Chip. Yeah, as you said, we studied also how specific rainfall events will possibly change in the future. And we did it with the support of UPC. First of all, we studied episodes that are of 100 millimeters and 200 millimeters in 24 hours, because those two indicators already exist in the region. They help us to decide if the flood plan should be activated and different then procedures are triggered. But then we decided to also go for shorter episodes, because these short and intense rainstorms, they can trigger flash floods, which are already common in the Mediterranean area. But we suspect that they will, be more frequent or maybe more intense due to climate change. So first, we decided thresholds that we estimated with historical data for these shorter events. And then the toolbox helped us to estimate how these short episodes, let's say, will be in the future. And we could see their return period, their frequency. And then we could compare this with the present one. And also we were able to study a bit how the magnitude, the intensity of these episodes will change. I think that's the summary, very brief.
Thank you very much for that very good summary of the activities. Very interesting indeed. Regarding Finland, we were wondering if you would have the knowledge of today, would you have done some things differently, or how would your approach to the activities have been affected?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that I would focus on more, I think, or I would just maybe reserve enough time for each of the processes. Like I mentioned, if you do a lot of work in the beginning, it will pay off in the end for you. And I think we were, maybe because we started quite early in the project, we were sort of doing all the things at the same time, and because of that, the framework part for us was maybe a bit rushed. And I think that's something that I would have wanted to spend more time time on, because that would have help now in the analysis phase. And then also, like, I think using the toolbox is quite technical, as I think has been already mentioned here. And I don't really know that much about it. We are not a technical partner, and I don't have any coding experience. But I maybe would have sort of tried to learn something myself that I could have at least understood more about the technical side, because that is so important. And it's important that you have a partner or someone in the works who really understands the modeling and the technical work, and is able to see, like, if you stop here, what does it mean, and should we get something more? Should we add more scenarios, or should we add more something, or is this relevant, or is this throwing us actually off completely? And for example, we had this one model that was really really out there, really like it wasn't in the same range as the others, and we've had a really big discussion about should we like keep it, because it seems to throw everything a bit off, but maybe it's actually really relevant for us. So I would maybe just like educate myself more, or at least we were in a good position that the Finnish Meteorological Institute is very, very technically savvy and knows a lot about this and does this on a daily basis. So we had a very good and knowledgeable technical partner. But that's also very important, and that's something that if I wasn't working with them, I would definitely try to find someone as good as them to work with us. And also like have enough time for that process as well. I think time and resources are the key.
Very much. That's that sounds very important to know indeed. And going a bit further into stakeholders and collaborations, I was wondering for Christina, how you fostered these collaboration with the academic stakeholders, but also municipal stakeholders, and how did you approach this? What is, according to you, the best way to foster those collaborations and to make sure that they're fruitful?
It's kind of a permanent work. You know, we've been working with the academic institutions for quite some years concerning climate change, because we've been developing several types of partnerships in terms of risk modeling, climate scenarios, and making some applications for funding for different types of projects. And always on those projects, we have the scientific, technical modeling for climate scenarios producing, but we always have this concern of involving the local population, community, different stakeholders. So for us, it's not unusual. It's a type of work that we've been doing for several years with the big industries, with parishes, with organizations, local organizations. So even when we had the meeting here for CLIMAAX here in Setúbal, it was 1 year ago. We already had those connections on the terrain, and we brought those peoples to some of our meetings, as you recall. So I think it's quite important for the municipalities to have always this type of work ongoing in different projects, and mostly with climate change projects, because climate change and climate change scenarios and modeling, it's quite a complex and sometimes abstract theme. So if you put solutions and you give practical examples to people concerning climate change impacts and solutions to solve the problems, people get involved. People want to participate, And that's mainly our job to do that as a municipality also. It's to give the knowledge, but also present the different type of solutions there is, and then try to implement them with those local communities, the different stakeholders, etc. But I also wanted to enhance one thing from China, that participation, that it was quite important also for us as a pilot on the CLIMAAX project to discuss the different results of the different models between the 5 pilots. And I want to enhance the team that Thomas Kuhn made with these 5 pilots, with regular meetings and trying to always fighting time, but always discussing the work and what the results, and even then we work with Cajo and Zelina, and then we work with the Italian people and the Catalonia people, and it was quite enriching for us also to have this type of work. And I think it's a good practice that it should be continued.
Thank you very much for these great words, and congratulations for all of you on the results that you've achieved also through this collaboration. I saw also a question from the chat for you. Selena was asking who the project leader is for the sponge park that you were presenting about.
It's the municipality.
It's the municipality. Okay.
Yeah, the municipality did the retaining basins project 8 years ago, and we had an application for funding. That was the first phase of the project. And then the landscaping, it's also being done by our local teams inside the municipality, mainly the team that works with public space rehabilitation, and with great landscapers that we have there. And the initial project had to be readjusted in order to enhance the nature-based solutions qualities, to have endemic species, to enhance the sponge effect, because originally it was intended to be, with some facilities for children, and maybe a kiosk for having some tea and things like that. But then we realized it wasn't a good idea, because parts of the year that areas are flooded because the retaining basins are doing their job. So we had to adjust the landscape project, and internally it has been done. And right now they are going under constructions to enhance the climate refugee facilities, having small benches, some pathways, some very minimal facilities, but making it usable for people as a climate area refugee for heat waves.
Thank you very much. That is very good to know. Thank you for the great explanation. I see another question in the chat for Michel's team in Jelena. Oscar is asking, I wonder which definition of heat wave you have used. Could you perhaps delve a bit further into that?
Yes, I cannot remember exactly, and I can't find it so quickly now. If I remember correctly, we took 3 consecutive days when the maximum temperature, daily temperature, goes over 35 degrees of Celsius. I think this was the definition, 90% exact.
Thank you very much for that information. And I also had a question for you, because you mentioned that there were some challenges that you had to overcome. And I was wondering, what was the strategic turning point in the work, in the teamwork also within the project for you, and how did that go about?
Mhm. The biggest strategic turn, I would say that it was about the focus on the hazards. That in the beginning we have defined the heavy rainflow or basically the urban flash floods as the result of the heavy raining as our top priority. That the reason was that if you have a lot of water falling down on the city infrastructure, and you see immediately the damage that is caused by this. And we felt that we need to persuade the people who are in power in the city, and that's the deputies in the city council, that look, what is now, how the flash flood looks like now and what will be in the future. We should invest in this and this changes in the city structure to be ready for the heavy precipitation. So we took this as the primary goal in the beginning. However, as the CLIMAAX project was developing and this result was not coming, and longer and longer the waiting was, we have been realizing that it will be quite a challenge to get such detailed results for concrete squares or concrete streets to show how many centimeters more it will be and what will be the bigger damage. We realized that we have to use a different approach for this, and then we turned our focus on the heat wave workflow. That is also very useful for us and helps especially the architects in the discussion with the stakeholders and with the investors. However, this is not so easy to understand and so easy to influence the result, because the temperature is something which is coming slowly, and you do not realize that the change by 1 or by tenths of degrees or the number of heat days per year. So it's rather something not so in the hands, and it helps not that much, or we do not need that for the deputies, but it helps more in the concrete consultancy with the investors. In the concrete situations, we have this as an argument.
Thank you very much for that great explanation. That's very much appreciated. And yeah, listening to all of the interventions from the pilots today, I think there's two things that stand out for me. Is that yeah, there's a need for technical knowledge and also for stakeholder engagement and community building. And I wanted to ask that's it, for example, when you were talking about coastal flooding. Um, how did you manage to, or did you manage to engage local stakeholders, and what approaches were most effective in building a community surrounding this issue or around this issue?
Yeah, this is actually a very complex question, and where you have to think about quite a lot of aspects, because when we were talking with stakeholders, first of all, they didn't understand what is actually the coastal flooding and where it comes from and so on. And at first it is quite difficult to start with simple definitions. And afterwards, unfortunately, nowadays everything is often about and around money issues. And that's why, yeah, sometimes stakeholders understand the problem, but then there comes some, we suggest to do something, but comes the money issue. And that, starting from that point of view, we understand that it is very necessary to build new regulations and new laws that are in a national level. And I'm very proud and very happy that recently, in the past years, in these following years, we had more and more laws, more and more regulations where we are doing the climate monitoring and different sector data monitoring, so that afterwards we can really make the good quality climate risk assessment. And then we, of course, can talk again with the stakeholders, because it is a never-ending story, but it all starts with the data, and that's why the monitoring is very important, and it has to be in a national level, all of these questions.
Thank you very much for that great insight into the issue. I don't see any further questions from the chat for the moment. So that rests me to thank all of the pilots for their time, for their efforts, for being with us today, and for sharing all of the very useful information also for the upcoming projects with us today. This session is being recorded, so you can read the slides again, watch the recording again. But I also want to point out that the pilots have also had pilot region webinars where we delve a bit further into all of the pilots in more detail. The recordings are on the website, so feel free to take a look there as well for more information. I think then you'll be able to know everything about the pilots that you should know. So thank you all very much once again for joining with us this morning. It's much appreciated. And in case there's any questions in the chat, we will try to write an answer in writing. So thank you once again. I'll reshare my screen. And now it is time to hear from our friends from the Carmine project. We are joined today by Alice Guitar from the Athens Research Center, who will tell you a little bit more about the Carmine project. As you are well aware, CLIMAAX is, of course, very passionate about climate resilience, and we would like to synergize our efforts and highlight other initiatives that are as well. So without further ado, I would like to give the floor to Alice.
Good morning, everyone. Okay, so thank you very much for the invitation and for giving us the opportunity to present the Carmine project, so which is about climate resilience development pathways in the metropolitan region of Europe. So the vision of the Carmine project is about providing knowledge-based climate resilience development pathways in the metropolitan region of Europe that bridges the local and regional scales by providing impact-based decision support services and multi-level climate governance supporting local adaptations, including both traditional and nature-based solutions. So the Carmine has a budget of about 10 million. It's includes 32 partners from 11 countries. And our goal is really to help the metropolitan communities to become more climate resilient, and going through co-producing process of knowledge-based tools, strategies, and plans for enhanced adaptation and mitigation actions, addressing the Charter of the EU missions on adaptations to climate change by 2030. So the project has a duration of 48 months. It started a year later from CLIMAAX. So we are actually just 1 year old now. And the project is coordinated by the Administrația Națională de Metropolitanie from Romania. So we call Carmine somehow a bit of a sister project of CLIMAAX, and we'll also be looking out of your development since you've been a year ahead of us. So an overview of the Carmine project. So we are really prioritizing local adaptation strategies. And as I mentioned before, we really try to look a little bit deeper into nature-based solutions. So what they can offer to us in terms of adaptation and mitigation strategy to climate change. We will develop and look more into digital replicate to climate change and socioeconomic characteristics. We also are developing a decision support service in order to implement multi-level climate governance. And in terms of tools and strategies, plans, it's really, once again, about adaptation and mitigation efforts. And the Carmen calls was really in support of the EU missions for adaptation to climate change for the cities. So we have 5 objectives. So objective 1 is about review the resource, tools, practices, and policies to identify the gaps that hinder the advancements of resilience pathways for metropolitan regions. It's also about developing risk models integrating climate, earth system, and socioeconomic factors. Objective 3 is about co-producing an adaptation framework that is combining living labs, so stakeholders engagement, digital twin, and nature-based solutions. The objective 4 is about providing advanced decision support services, again, combining climate data and socioeconomic indicators through socioeconomic impact assessment. And objective 5 is about developing a coordinated, impactful modeling and risk assessment to guide research and innovations priorities, policies, and cross-sectoral plan. So Carmine is developing a series of tools and solutions. So we are using living labs, while we are also developing an atlas of climate resilient solutions with, as I mentioned before, particular emphasis on nature-based solutions. We are also developing digital twins, so local digital twins, again, to support climate change mitigation and adaptation. So those digital twins, they are really specific on specific climate change risk, actually. And we are also developing an impact-based decision support service and policy pathways that are linked to research and innovations agendas. And finally, it's about also federating data management solutions. So the Carmen project is implemented in 8 different case studies areas, so we call them case study areas, and they are actually metropolitan regions. So we have Prague, Leipzig, Venice in Denmark, Athens in Greece, Barcelona in Spain, Bologna in Italy, Borasso in Romania, and Birmingham in UK. And in each of those case study areas, we are implementing living labs and developing digital twins solutions and decision support tools. And finally, it's about, in each of those case studies, to develop climate resilience development pathways, including nature-based solutions. So as I mentioned before, one of the key pillar of the Carmen project is the implementation of living labs. So this is one of our main tools for engaging local stakeholders. So we are using living labs as a participatory research tool. And in order really to act as an open innovation space, which foster co-creations with users, because the end goal is really to better address the local stakeholder needs in each of the metropolitan region. And within those living labs, and as part of to engage local stakeholders, we are using a system innovation approach. So system innovation approach is an analytical approach towards system change based on an interconnected set of innovations. And the idea really of the system innovation approach is to be implemented where we have to solve complex multi-parameter problems. And it's really about emphasizing the different functions of particular systems. So here is about the metropolitan areas, and really looking at all the sectors as a whole and the interconnections across the sectors. And more particularly in the case of Carmine, related to climate change risk. So the system innovation approach is implementing in different phases. So first of all, within the living labs and with the local stakeholders, we define the scope of the system. So here, in terms of climate change, risk and solutions within the metropolitan areas. Then we are mapping the different stakeholders and the related challenges in order to really co-define actually the problem we want to change. So in case of Carmine is which kind of climate change challenges we should focus on within the living labs. And then we are like envisioning, so we are working with in order to co-develop visions with local stakeholders to outline the desired future state and goal that should be achieved within the metropolitan area in general in the time frame of like 20 to 30 years. And then we identified pathways in order to reach those visions. So in terms of implementing those living labs, so of course, we run through a thorough stakeholder mapping, but more specifically within the Carmine project, we really want to emphasize the focus and the feedback and the reflection on the vulnerable communities. So we really want to involve them within the project to really better understand what are the main needs and impact of climate change on the vulnerable communities. So the vulnerable communities, for instance, within the metropolitan regions in relation to climate change can be like elderlies, can be young communities, can be low-income communities. So we really try to develop a framework to better involve those communities that are often left behind and not necessarily heard within a research projects such as Carmine. So in terms of implementations, so we are running 3 rounds of workshops. So our living labs are based on 3 different workshops. The first one, we are focusing on setting up the scene, basically. So identifying what are the main challenge, the main risk and drivers related to those climate change challenge, but also trying to already identify which kind of solutions have been either tested or either targeted within the different metropolitan area region, knowing that quite a few regions already have adaptation plans, so we are not starting from scratch. So we really try to move a step further from what is already been done at the local level. Or like a workshop 2 is focusing on the envisioning, while the workshop 3 is about co-identifying, co-designing the pathways to reach those visions. And additionally to that, we are really working with the local stakeholders also to identify specific nature-based solutions that also should be implemented with each of the metropolitan regions. And here we are using a geodesign mapping tool. So just to give you a little bit of insight of how actually we are engaging the local communities in our first one workshop that just happened in the last 2 months, so before the New Year's, where we co-identified challenges and risk. So we used this kind of tool, which is, we call it the pestle wheel, where we really ask local stakeholders to try to identify so risk drivers and solutions, but also barriers to solutions, using this kind of framework, which allow us to ask and to make actually people reflect and think beyond the most obvious solutions or risk or barriers, but try to think about what could be, for instance, so political risk or drivers, social risk drivers or solutions, technological or legal, environmental, and even economic risk drivers or solutions and barriers. And finally, within this workshop, we already, once stakeholders have identified potential adaptation and mitigation solutions, we also ask them to try to prioritize which kind of adaptation and mitigation solutions should be the first focused within the Carmine project. So here, just to give you a quick idea of the implementation plan and the timing of the Carmine project. So in 2024, as I mentioned, we had this first one of workshops, which really like set up the scene and allow us to kind of do like a system mapping of the key issue challenges related to climate change in each of the metropolitan area. In 2025, we will implement a second round of workshop where there we will dive into the visionings and the future. While end of 2025, beginning of 2026, we will co-develop the adaptation and mitigation pathways. So this is just to give you an idea of, I don't know if potentially, we could have some kind of like synergies with the activities that are implemented in CLIMAAX. So this was a quick overview general overview of the Carmine project. And now I will actually give the floor to my colleague from the Living Lab in Brașov metropolitan area. It's in Romania, that will give you a quick overview of what of like the actual implementation of this whole methodology and what are the initial results of the first one of workshop of the Living Lab in this specific case study. Christian, can I give you the floor?
Yep, thank you.
Super.
And maybe we can use also this sharing, not to change.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you so much for your invitation. Yes, like Alice mentioned before, I will try to give you a brief overview of activity that was performed related to case study of Brașov. So this is the content of my presentation, and this has a general image related with the first activity. So the next slide. So only to have a general idea about Brașov metropolitan area, we discuss about average size metropolitan region. If we compare at the level of European at the European level, we have in the metropolitan area almost for 100,000 inhabitants. There are 7 cities and 12 municipalities. We discuss about very interesting areas in terms of nature and biophysical and social and different kind of risk, and also the climate change risk are included in this category. The focus of the Living Lab is oriented on the drought that will be also considering the different scenario, climatic scenario will be an important risk that must be addressed in the future in this metropolitan region. Also, it's interesting that we discuss about a region that have very active processes of urban regeneration. In the past, in the communist time, was an industrial area. Now we discuss about more services, including tourism activities in terms of economy that influence also are influenced by the exposure to the climate risk. So next slide, we follow the next slide, please, Alice. We follow the design of the design that was realized by Alice and the group from Athens in order to organize our activities. We had an initial workshop in June 2024 in order to validate the mapping activity, the mapping of the stakeholders, and to try to extend or to reduce also the number of institutions that are interested in climate change adaptation. After that, we had in September, October, we have some preparatory meeting, different preparatory meeting. We try to exercise and to find different issues, different challenges that are related to the workshop. So, and also we try to prepare the workshop. We had also the workshop activity on the 28th November. We had 31 participants, and also quite interesting that you have not only the public institution that in general are dominant in this living lab, but also private institution. We have also academia and NGOs. The activity was organized also with everybody. We have two activities that was with everybody, and we have some sub-activities that was in subgroup. We had 3 sub-working groups. Each subgroups has a facilitator, supporting of the facilitator and a recorder. So with different attribution, the facilitators must coordinate the discussion. The supporting facilitators must support the facilitators, especially in the technical aspect, in interacting with the people, and also in the undercover, like a spy in the back, was the recorder, because we are interested in capitalizing all information that are related to the living lab and related to the discussion. We try to capitalize not only the details related to it, what the people speak, but also we are interested in having the reaction to find the implication of different people, and so on and so forth. And after the fourth one, we identify that we don't have a very good implication of the vulnerable groups. And in this day, we have in Brasov, we have meetings with older people, with youth, and also with the farmers. The meeting with the older and with the youth was just performed, and with the farmer, we'll have in 2 hours. But was quite interesting, because we identified that in the workshop was not so active. So next slide. We have a very interesting results. We use like a challenge drought, and in general, the people agree that it's an important challenge for the Brasov. Of course, we have also the different position, and that is normal. And we consider that is normal in the discussion. We identify also 26 risks related to drought. Quite interesting. I mentioned here only the higher frequency in the list. And this risk was correlated also with drivers, and was correlated also with other variables. We identify drivers, and also we identify 25 measures. In fact, was more than 25 measures, but we try to compact them and to organize to be unique measure. The next slide. Point out also that we try to have a hierarchy or a ranking of the solution of the measure that we identify in the workshop. What is important to know that we have a we have some measures, some drivers that was like results was the results of the preparatory meeting. So we start with in general, I don't know, maybe 25% of the risk of the drivers of the measure was obtained in the pre-testing activities. But we was completely happy, because this activity and this risk was confirmed in the discussion. At the end, we realize also prioritization of this measure in terms of easiness of implementation, urgency, and also importance. And you identify different, the people, the stakeholders that participated in the meeting identify different level of importance in terms of, next slide. point out also the different engagement of the public. Of course, we use this PESTEL well. We identify difference of the engagement between the groups. Yeah, we have 3 groups, but each group was with different patterns. Very important was also the experience of the facilitators, because the most experienced of facilitators obtain the maximum, of course, from this meeting. So it's very important also to have a facilitator that know very well how to do and how to perform with the different parallel discussion, and to understand what's happening in the group. It's also different. We have a very good involvement of environmental institution. In general, we don't expect that, because in Romania, environmental institutions are a weak institution. But in this workshop, we had a very good implication and with good input in the workshop. The academia was in general with dual role, was both constructive and destructive. We had was completely interesting, because in general academia was responsible for developing the discussion that tried to monopolize the dialogue. Come also with very smart idea, but sometimes with develop contradictory or useless discussion. So was completely interesting, because I am representative of the academia, and sometimes it's true that we have the impression that you know everything, but in reality, we are sometimes far away of the reality. Also, the NGOs stimulate the discussion in general with moderate contribution in the workshop, but was an important role in stimulating the discussion. And we have very good input on the specialized stakeholder that was in general passive, but when you ask was asked in particular about different ideas, give very interesting and very valuable input in the workshop. But we identify especially the low engagement of the vulnerable groups. We have in the living in the workshop, we have also vulnerable groups involved, but with low engagement, especially youth was completely unengaged, because was blocked because of was the discussion between professional and stay far away, and that's why we decide to have additional discussion. So the next slide will point out this. This input was completely interesting, having a very nice discussion with youth and older. I know that I will have also very nice discussion with the farmers, but was in terms of discussion with the older people was completely nice to have especially the information related to these historical events with some very smart measure was completely amazing, and I was completely happy with this meeting. And today with the youth was completely nice, because was very a smart idea and new idea that was not specific in the workshop. So the last slide in my presentation was to concluding remarks. It's important to test different approaches of Living Lab before the official events to maximize the output. I think it's quite important not to go, okay, let's see what's happened, but it's important to have different alternatives, also how to and to initiate the facilitators in terms of how to manage this kind of situation. It's also interesting in ensuring a preliminary form for each workshop component, and also to have a preliminary results, because these preliminary results can be helpful in stimulating the discussion. It's important to have multiple eyes. We have three we have 3 person or 4. In this case was a coordinator that tried to see all the what's happening in all groups. We have a facilitator. We have a support for facilitators in a recorder, and after that we have a meeting that try to synthesize this activity. Also, it's important to train all persons involved in the activity. It's important to consider a mixed group, so not to have only the public institution or private, but mixing together, because the results are quite nice. To learn to manage the potential conflicts or destructive discussion, and of course, very important, don't exclude the vulnerable groups, because it's gold mine. And these 2 days that we have the experience with the vulnerable groups was completely amazing in terms of idea. So thank you for your attention, and I hope that I don't give so many information that was not useful. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Christian. Thank you very much, everybody. We're here to answer any questions if you have. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the information. I think it's very useful. If it's okay with you, I see one question in the chat, but perhaps we could answer it in writing, because we are very tight in time right now, and there's just a few messages I would like to spread for tomorrow's session, because we're kind of at the end of today's session right now. We had very good introduction from the pilot regions and from this very interesting initiative as well. But I also wanted to point out something that could be of interest to you as well, which is the CLIMAAX community of practice. This is a platform for collaboration and for knowledge exchange on climate risk assessments. And if you become a member of this community of practice, you can share insights, learn from your peers, you can receive advice and identify best practices, you can contribute to CLIMAAX's activities and collaborate on shared interests and applications in the future. You have the QR codes to join the community of practice or for more information on your screen. It's also on our website. And tomorrow we will have a dedicated session to the community of practice. That will be a community of practice session, let's say. So there you'll have a very good feeling of what it will be like to become members of it. So please come back at the same time tomorrow for that. As you can see, we have a few interesting points here on the agenda. We'll have a member from the mission on adaptation to climate change presenting. We will have a dedicated session to the toolbox, the CLIMAAX toolbox, and we will have, as I mentioned before, the community of practice session. So I would like to thank everyone who participated today for their very interesting insights, for their very interesting interventions, and everyone for asking questions in the chat. The recording will be made available as soon as we can, together with the slides as well. So please keep an eye out on our website for that as well. But that rests me to say that I hope that we'll see everyone tomorrow at the same time again. So for now, thank you very much for attending today's session, and have a great rest of your afternoon.